It's always good to start with a fish. I've been fishing for a little while now. I'm at the fishery is called Meadowlands, and this is like a natural reservoir just outside of Coventry, but it's a brilliant fishery. Fishes well in the winter, they catch massive weights, sort of 40 and 50 pounds in the winter. And this is the fish I'm after today, skimmers. I've already had one or two nice fish, just getting the peg warmed up. When you start to fish with a feeder, I'm on feeder today, but when you start, you always have to build the swim up and get it going. So, and although it's classed as a commercial fishery, look at that, beautiful, beautiful, probably 12 ounce. So, you'd call it a commercial, but it isn't. It's more like a natural venue. Just slip that one in there. So I've already had one or two bigger bream. I'm here today, I'm fishing with a new browning product. It's called a drop cloud feeder. So the idea is, I'll show you the shape later, but the idea is that as the feed hits the water, you get a cloud coming off it. Some of the ground bait stays in as it drops through. So it's something that you'd use to sort of start a peg off perhaps, or maybe keep going with it if the fish, as long as the fish size is good. So it's to really get your swim going, catching on the drops through the water and then settling on the bottom. I'm trying to catch some bigger fish, so I'm using double dead reds, and I'm hooking one way, one the other, so one through the pointed end, just leaves a little bit more hook showing, one through the other. So if you use like a dead maggot, doesn't move, and the bait is really soft, so it's definitely more attractive to like big skimmers and bream. Simple to load this feeder, just a nice squeeze, medium, 30 gram, and I'm picking a marker, so I'm going in the same place. I've clipped the line up, so I'm stopping dead at distance. I know exactly the distance, and keeping it dead straight. I've got a marker on the far bank. Keep the rod upright when you cast, and as the feeder's going through the water, I'm watching it all the time as it drops through the water, hits the bottom, and then I'm still watching it now, not sinking the line. I'm just bringing that back without moving the reel handle at all, and I've still got a slight bend in the rod. I've got about a 2 foot tail, so reasonably long tail. So as that's gone in, there's this cloud that's come off it, but there's also some ground bait that's got to the bottom as well. So it's like a dual effect. And these skimmers, sometimes you hardly get a bite. I've got a 1 ounce tip. I'm using an 11 foot rod. This one is a Zenus advanced feeder rod. It's sort of mid-price. Well, in fact, not expensive really, about £130 this one, so fairly cheap. A lovely light rod, comes with 3 tips, 1 ounce, 1.5 and 2 ounce. I've got the lightest tip in today because skimmers, you hardly get a bite off them. Just looking now, sometimes you just get a little flicker. If I don't get a bite, then what I do is just move the feeder a little bit. Just lift the rod up and just inch the feeder forward. Put it back down again. It's a beautiful day today. Sun is shining. But it was really cold this morning. It was probably went down to about -2 or -3. So there was a frost this morning. Takes a little while for the fish to feed. It's not like a summer's day. If you came here on a summer's day, you'd cast out and the tip would fly around straight away. I'm just looking for any little movement. Just a matter of waiting. This one's a smaller fish, but the bites are coming every 1 or 2 minutes. It just feels like a small skimmer. And the line I'm using, an 8-pound line, which is, I always go by diameters on line. I don't go by breaking strain. This is a 0.21 diameter. It's just a small skimmer, this one, which is ideal for this style of fishing. I'm fishing about 20 metres out. There. See, but you can even get bites from those small skimmers, as long as you're doing it right, as long as you've got everything set. That little bit of movement, I pulled the feeder forward. That's like a 6-ounce skimmer. Exactly what I'm after today. Getting really chewed up the maggots. The good thing about feeder fishing, once you've got, so I've got my line clipped up and you're casting to that distance, to that marker, then you know you're building up a nice bed of feed throughout the day, and usually it just gets better and better. I'm using dead reds. Why dead reds? Because they're softer. They really are a soft bait. If you look at a dead maggot, it's much softer than a normal maggot, so more attractive. Any bait that's soft for skimmers is better. So a lovely soft. And how I do my reds, what I do is I bag the maggots up overnight in the fridge, or they don't have to be in the fridge, but just bag them up so there's no air, so that when you get up in the morning, they're sort of, they look dead, but they're not. They're alive really, but they're not moving. And then I put very hot water, not boiling. Boiling's too much, but very hot water on them, and that kills them. That finally kills them, but they're still really soft. That's how you do dead maggots. That's how I like to do them anyway. And you know when you cast each time, that feeder's going in the same spot. I don't touch the reel handle. I keep the rod out a little bit to the right and then bring it back onto the rest. You can get the bite any time, so you don't want to sink your line unless you have to, because I can then watch that tip. The bite can come any time that feeder has hit bottom to when you sit and wait. They're skimmers, so I'll probably, if it was roach fishing, they'd probably be catching them all the time, but skimmers usually hits on the bottom and they're a little bit more cautious, so I'm just waiting. So I'll leave it. I don't move the feeder at all until after about perhaps a minute. If the tip hasn't gone, then I move it just to bring the hook bait back into the ground bait a bit. If you think about it, if you're using a fairly long tail, then your hook bait is just going past your ground bait. So if I don't get a bite, I'll just lift the rod up and move it forward. Just inch it forward. Back on the rest again, watching it all the time. And all I've done is I've created just a slight angle between where I'm casting. You don't have to be at right angles, just as long as you've got a little bit of an angle, doesn't want to be too much, to your feeder, that's enough to see the bite. And for skimmers, I like to sit with the rod butt on my leg and my arm along the rod, so that all I have to do is pick up the rod. When you get the bite, you just pick up the rod. Forget about your reel handle, just pick up the rod and feel the fish first before you start to wind. You find you lift into the fish and sit where you think it's the most comfortable for you. I like to strike across my body rather than the other way. I had a bite then when I was chatting away and the tip went. I should have struck really. I'm going to leave it. I'll probably have another go at it. The skimmers, they're not too vicious. Yeah, I like to strike that way, across my body like that. I'm hardly missing any bites. I'm only on normal line, I'm not on braid. Hardly missing a bite into the fish. It's just a lovely way to fish. Nice and smooth. As I say, 11-foot rod, short rod. I'm only going 20 metres, not a long cast. It's just lovely when you're getting a fish every put in. This is a slightly bigger skimmer. When you're fishing, it's just good to be efficient at what you're doing. So if you know you're casting in the same place, the same method, everything is right, and then you become efficient and you just catch more fish. Just hooked inside this mouth. That's a lovely skimmer, that one. They're sort of like 12, 14 ounces. Incredible fishing. Shall we have a look at the feeder and how we fill it? I'm just using a short running link there so that the feeder is always moving through. Anywhere where there's carp, you need to fish with a running boom like that. I've got 8-pound breaking strain line, which is 0.21 reel line. That's if you look at say 0.2 to 0.24, it's about right. I've twizzled the line up here so that it forms a boom coming off. Keeps your hook length away from the feeder, so just to stop tangles. And then just got loop to loop there with my hook line, and I'm using a 0.15 fluorocarbon. Now fluorocarbon, the fish can't see it. Doesn't matter in this water because it's a bit of colour, so it doesn't matter. But why I love using fluorocarbon when I'm feeder fishing is it doesn't twist up. If you've ever been fishing and you're coming back in with a feeder, you come back in and your line's all twizzled up. Well, mine doesn't, so you're just more efficient at what you do. And it ties up just the same, if you have a look. So there's I'm trying to have a look to think what it, yeah, it's 4.6, so it's pretty strong, 0.15, 4.6. There's carp in here, and if I hook a carp, I've got a chance of getting it out, so that's quite good. Don't need to go too fine on your hook lines when you're feeder fishing. I find you don't. Better to have a slightly thicker one, much easier to use. And then down to the hook, and I've just got a 16, a fine 16 barbless hook. I tie all my own hooks. I tie a beautiful hook. I love tying hooks, but it is a boring thing if you've got a load to do. But I tie all my own really neat. It's a knotless knot, so I can tie a knotless knot on a spade end, so there's no knot in that hook, and it always sits perfectly. I'll be able to fish with that all day, I know, without any problems. So that's basically the rig. The feeder itself, this is the new feeder that we've developed. And it's developed from a window feeder, really. This is sort of like a window feeder because it's got a window in it, but it's got an open end, so it's a drop cloud. So when you fill it, if I fill this feeder, and you fill it, always fill from this top end here, if you push down on it, because you've got a window there, you're not really compressing the ground bait in there fully. You're compressing it where you push it in and down the back, but it's fairly loose. Oh, visit from a duck. But it's fairly loose there, so when the feeder hits the top, you get a cloud. So drop cloud, but ground bait will stay in the feeder until it hits the bottom. So then you get a cloud, still some feed in the bottom, a drop cloud feeder, fantastic to use for sparking off your swim. Brilliant. And yeah, it's a bite every throw in. Lots of small skimmers about today as well. Small ones mixed in with the bigger ones. But still lots of bites. It's all bream and skimmers though. That was perfect, that one. Just as I netted it, the hook came out. It was lovely. Can put him straight in the net. Let's do a little. I'm going to do a little sequence on casting. So, double dead red maggots. One hooked through the pointed end, and the other one as you would normally hook it. And just make sure when you cast that, just keep your rod upright, look at the direction, the marker that you've picked, keep your rod upright. And if it's, I love to cast off my left shoulder, but you can only cast with the direction of the wind. Now the wind today is going left to right, so you need really to cast over your right shoulder. That keeps your hook bait and everything out to the right to prevent any tangle. So you really want to learn to cast off of both shoulders depending on the wind. I prefer this one, but today I'm casting the other way. Keep the rod upright, hit the clip, just flick the rod back, hit the clip, then flick your bail arm over as the feeder's dropping, watch it, and then try to position your rod rest so that all you've got to do without moving the feeder is watching, keeping a little bit of tension on your line, watching it all the time, and then as the line sinks the tip will come back. So I haven't touched the reel handle, and all the time I'm watching the tip. So I haven't had to move the reel handle, so if I do get a bite, I can lift up and strike into it straight away. Sometimes if you're fiddling about sinking your line, the bite's already happened, particularly with this sort of feeder. When it's warm in the summer, the fish will take on the drop more than they are today. I'm just looking, there's a bite now, and in, straight in, so that's probably within about a minute of casting. Hitting the bite, good strike. You have to, when you're using line, you have to have a good firm strike. If they're not carp, if they're carp, don't strike. If the tip flies around straight away, you don't strike, you just lift into it. But these skimmers, you have to strike, otherwise you don't hit them. There you are. So I'm building the swim up all the time. Every time I cast out with this drop cloud feeder, I'm building the swim up, attracting more fish into the peg, into the area. It's lovely. You can see the red maggots. It's only hooked just inside the mouth. Barbless hook, so it comes out easy. Beautiful condition skimmers, really are nice. I just there must be something about the quality of this water. As I say, this is Meadowlands and it's a reservoir, so it must be the quality of the water that for the fish to be like this, and good volumes of fish as well, feeding. what makes fish feed so much, of course, when there's a big volume and they have to feed. But it's not like a commercial where you'd find it will be way overstocked. Just lovely to come out and fish feeder. Nice short rod. I'm only going 20 metres, so 11-foot rod is perfect. A shorter rod you can be more accurate with, but once you have to go a longer distance, then you use a longer rod. Loads of particles in there, and I'm just squeezing that as I go in, squeezing it. But that bottom window, because that's open, that ground bait's pretty, just really only just holding in, and as soon as it hits the water, that will come out. That's the idea of it, a drop cloud feeder. Keep it upright, nice cast, nice smooth cast, rod back, and then bail arm over. I'm almost pointing the rod to where the feeder went in, and then I'm just bringing it back, not far, just enough to create that angle so that I can see the bite. Went round straight away and I missed it. Wow, got to miss the odd one, haven't you? That was immediate. Probably was a roach, I think. Maybe not. That was a bite on the drop. Great fishing. No, it didn't touch the bait, that one. But that's really how you want to. The speed of catching fish is always about the speed of the bite, isn't it? So if you go in and it goes round straight away, then you're just catching more fish. You're not waiting for the bite. So, and these feeders, that's what they will create. Eventually, you get more and more fish taking on the drop. If you can get the bite on the drop, then that's the fastest way to catch them. Just a nice smooth cast. Just keep everything. When the feeder, don't move the rod until the feeder hits the bottom. Once the feeder's hit the bottom, then you come back with the rod, watching your tip all the time. The bite can come at any time, so just watch your tip. There's still that, I haven't tightened the reel handle, but there's still just a little bend in the tip. So there's just a slight pressure. Doesn't want to be much, because you're fishing for skimmers, so you want to see every little, there was a little bite then, little flicker. I really want to move that 1 ounce tip is really soft. A little double bite then. Getting a bit excited, aren't I, really? Missed that one. In my ground bait, I'm just putting a few particles, some dead maggots, some dead mags and casters. So a little bit of particle mixed in with the ground bait. I also love to use this. Let me just show you some, if I can tip some in my hand. When I'm fishing with skimmers, I love to use this. Look at that, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? It's called a yellow sinking crumb, and the fish really eat that. It's no problem to put that in your ground bait, and if you throw it in the water, it just sinks straight away. It's unbelievable. It's just pure breadcrumbs dyed. But look at the colours. I think fish, and particularly bream, I think they love this yellow sinking crumb. And when I'm fishing roach fishing, I use a red sinking crumb, but no, I just love it. So I've got that in my ground bait as well, and I've got a bream, GoPro bream ground bait, so bream and skimmers, that's what I'm after with that, plus particles. And I'm trying to create this cloud. As I'm casting out, the feeder will hit the water, cloud will come out, and the bait will drop behind it. So just trying to create an attraction, which is all you need to do, just attract the fish into that area, get them competing, and then they're easier to catch. I'm catching okay on 2 dead maggots, nice soft maggots, but there's an alternative. If I get too many small fish and I've got some worms, I can use a piece. A worm head is good, a head of a dendrobina, that's quite a good hook bait. And also casters as well. I've got double casters is a good bait for big fish. I might try that in a minute. But to catch everything, maggot is always the best. And then if you want to try and be selective in the size of the fish, then you may have to go to perhaps casters, double caster, or worm. Either of those are good. And if you're fishing for carp, then a banded pellet, a banded 6mm pellet would be good. And you can fish for carp with this method just the same. Put a few pellets in the feeder, still fish on the drop. And the bait's not touched that time. So the bait that you put on can be selective in the type of fish you're catching, but just so if I start to get bitted out with too many small fish, then I'll go probably to worm or double caster. At the moment I'm still creating at the moment we have created a nice feeding area for the fish. Not too far out, 20 metres further than the pole line, and I'm fishing in about, I'm guessing it's sort of 3.5 metres deep. Over 3 metres, 3.5, so just a reasonable depth. But you can imagine that cloud of feed dropping down through the water, attracting fish in. If it got so there was too many small fish coming into the cloud, you can then switch to a window feeder, a normal window feeder with particles, where the feeder, I'm going to bite now and I'm talking away, where the feeder would take everything to the bottom, and then the particles, all you get is a layer of particles on the bottom. That also can be good for big fish. I had a bite then, and I don't know whether I shouldn't really have struck, but I had a bite when I was chatting. So a window feeder can sometimes bring you big fish. You can swap between the feeders. But at the moment this drop cloud feeder is working so well, I don't need to change it. Lots of bites, fill it up ever so quickly. Only through that top hole. Keep your rod upright, look at your marker, rod back. You bring your rod back and then drop it forward so that the feeder goes in really smoothly. Just create that angle. I'm keeping the tip tight all the time, looking for that bite. And if you look at my feeder arm where I can move my rod along the feeder to tighten the line. I don't have to wind the reel handle. So if I pull the rod there, look, and drop it there, see how much tighter it is. So you can just move your rod along the grooves to keep just a teeny bit of tension in the tip. For big fish that give you good bites, you can almost leave your line slack, but for skimmers, then you have to create that sort of, I'm into a good skimmer now, you have to create that good, oh, this is a nice fish. You just have to create that little bit so that you can see skimmers are so cautious when they bite. Yes, another nice bream. Perfect way to fish. What I've done is I always fish with the anti-reverse on so that I can strike in to the fish without touching the reel handle. So I've got the anti-reverse on. If it's a big fish that I think I'm going to need to back wind, then I flick the anti-reverse off so that then you can use your back wind and your clutch. I'll flick my anti-reverse off there because I'm on a 16 hook. This is a nice fish. You can tell with bream, you get the nodding of the head. Don't you think that that the pleasure of fishing is playing the fish when you actually got, oh, this is a lovely bream, proper bream, just coming in, just shows you that cloud feeder's really working now. It's a good sized bream. Lovely to catch these. Bream are a matchman's dream. This size, oh, that's a big fish. So it's just a matter always of building up your swim, getting the fish into it, and that is a proper fish. There, how about that for a fish? Beautiful. Drop cloud feeder in action. So I'm using a 30-inch hook length. When you're fishing, I'll carry on fishing while I'm chatting to you. When you're fishing, what length tail do you select? Right, if you're catching a lot of fish on the drop, then it's good to use a long tail. You can go up to sort of 4 or 5 foot. If you're not seeing the bite, so if you're getting the bite, so you're coming back in and your maggot's smashed, and you just cast out, then it means that the tail that you're using is too long. So if, say today, I am seeing the bites. If I wasn't seeing them, if the maggots were getting damaged, then you can shorten that hook length. So usually, the harder it is, or if you want to catch fish on the drop, use a longer hook length. When the fish are more aggressive, then you use a shorter hook length. If you're getting loads of bites and you want to see the bite quickly, you use a shorter hook length. But a good start is about 2'6" is a good way to start. So a reasonable hook length. So as the feeder hits the bottom, from 2 foot above, your bait is then dropping through slowly in that last 2 foot of water. And it's always the same. The harder it is, usually the longer you have to fish, the longer tail you have to use. But then, if it's too long and you're getting bites that you haven't seen, then you shorten it down. So if you're getting bites but you're not seeing them, so you come back in and your maggot's damaged, then you need to shorten your hook length. But I saw that bite, but I missed it. There's quite a few small fish here. But as long as you can see the bite, then that's fine. Doesn't matter about your hook length. That's good. That's all right. You're seeing the bite. Probably hit that one. The bait's not even damaged then, so might have been a little liner. But see, everything's working perfectly. When you're feeder fishing, you don't want any tangles. Every time I come back in, the feeder's moving. That boom that I've got there is holding the line away. No tangles. So you're fishing all the time. You're perfect. You're not worrying about your rig. Because the line's clipped up, as I cast the feeder, when the feeder hits the water, the hook bait will be pushed past it, so it keeps it clear. The feeder goes down, then the feeder drops down behind it. The ground bait drops down, and the maggots will drop through the ground bait as well. So you just keeping everything in sequence. Little plop as the feeder goes in. As that feeder's hit the water, the hook bait's gone past, so no tangles. Every time I cast out, I know everything's perfect. And then rodding the rest. I haven't moved that reel handle. Don't worry that your line is on the surface. That will sink. As long as the water's reasonably deep, as long as it's not very, very shallow, that line will sink automatically. This is a lovely, As I say, this is an 8 pound, it's a Browning reel line. Use it on rod or for float fishing or for feeder fishing. Just a good standard. And it comes, the line comes in a 600 metre spool. So that means you can get 4 reels filled up, 150 metres filled up, just with one spool of line. And it's a normal mono, so it's got some stretch in it, which you need. You don't need a high-tech line when you're using your reel. It's got better knot strength. I had a little bite then, little tiny touch. There's lots of small skimmers there, which are sort of easy to miss. But I'm coming back in. I had a little tiny bite, but the bait isn't really done. The bait is still perfect, so it's not really been in the fish's mouth. I haven't. If it comes back in and the bait's maybe one maggot might be just a little bit funny, but you're still seeing the bite. You must be able to see the bite. Look at that. Every time comes back in perfect, no tangles. That twisted line holds the boom away, it's a boom, it holds the line away from the feeder. And just before your feeder hits, lift your rod back and then let it drop down. I'm on the line clip there, and then just flick your bail arm over. Watch for the feeder to hit bottom. Don't move it until the feeder hits the bottom. I'm not moving the feeder though. I'm just creating a little bit of tension at the moment, and then that'll drop back as the line sinks. But that'll still be good enough I can see a bite. Are you watching that tip all the time? You're watching for that tip to go round. And gradually that will come down. Now, if I wanted that to be less, if I can just move the rod onto the groove there, look. There's less tension on the tip. If I wanted it tighter, can just move it there. Look, just that little bit of a distance. You wouldn't believe it, would you? It makes a difference. I had a bite then as well when it was too tight. There you are. Let's drop it back a bit. It's still there. Still loads of fish there. Lots of small skimmers now. Those big bream are nice if you're catching those. I'm into another good fish. I mean, it's cold, but even in this cold weather, when you think it's going to be hard, this drop cloud feeder really has worked well. Just creating that crowd, bringing those fish into your peg, a mixture of sizes, big and small. The 2 dead red maggots have definitely been the best hook bait. Yes, another nice bream coming in here. This is just what we've been after. So perfect conditions. A lovely way to end the video. Just lots and lots of skimmers, good action, even in really cold weather at this beautiful Meadowlands Fishery. Look at that. What a great fish to finish up with.